And this
Okay.
was a training that I got at Deloitte. He's a
Okay.
partner now, and he said something. He says, if you want to be the best in your field,
Mm.
you should study an hour every day
Wow.
for 5 years,
Hmm.
right? And
Wow.
he said for him, he felt 5 years was too long. And
So
he
he will
wanted,
double.
yeah, so he wanted to shorten it basically, right? So he doubled it to 2 hours every day.
Wow.
And he said, truth is, 3 years down the line, he could see the results,
Hmm.
right? And this is a guy who became a partner at a very young age at
Young age.
Deloitte, right? So of course, I had every reason to
You had the proof
listen
to
exactly.
believe it. In this, we are going to have a blast. We have an awesome guest here that eventually I'll let him introduce himself a little bit. But he's a young man and doing amazing things. And he currently, his name is, I normally would call him Mr. Ade, right? But his full name is Mr. Adegbenro uh, Awojulu, right? Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, very
Yes.
correct.
Yes. Okay. So
Very
I'm
correct.
like I almost there. He's an amazing brother, and he is vice president of one of the prestigious banks in the world. It's a bank I've always admired. It's Goldman Sachs. If not one of the most prestigious banks, it probably is the most prestigious bank in the world, right? In terms of all the array of services that they offer. I don't know too much about that industry, but I can see them in Citibank, rubbing, shoulder to shoulder in terms of the services they offer. And the good thing is that our brother actually came from an African origin, just like all of us. And today you're going to profile, financial services, and he has been very gracious enough with his time to share with us. So, Ade, you're welcome.
Yep, thank you very much, Isaac. Really happy to be part of this. And yeah,
Awesome.
like you said, definitely been in the US for a while, joined financial services, and we're learning, growing. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's been fun, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, 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 awesome. So actually, this whole the purpose of this show or the purpose of this episode is actually to help our brothers and sisters back home, or our brothers and sisters who even may even be in the diaspora, who may be stuck in what they are doing in terms of career, or business, whatever it is, and may have lost hope in terms of direction. What do they do? We want to just show them the possibilities that yes, there are people from our background who are breaking through what we call the proverbial glass ceiling. And what an amazing testimony to have you on the show. So we're just going to start with this. So Ade, tell us a little bit about, your title is Vice President of Liquidity and Funding Risk. These are big English items, man. So what does it mean? Basically, all those big terms, what do they mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to, shed some light on it. Although I should say I don't know that I have broken the glass ceiling yet, but I'm absolutely, knocking on it and, hoping
Okay.
someday, that real break will come. But yeah,
Awesome.
definitely, as much as we keep pushing against, whatever glass ceilings exist, hopefully we can definitely break through, hopefully shatter it,
Yes.
eventually. And, to your point in terms of hopes for, the Africans out there, I definitely think there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities. We just need to see it. And
Exactly.
some people say, sometimes, if you can't dream it, you can't live it, right? So the first
Exactly.
thing is, do you see it? Is it in your line of vision, right? Can you even imagine it happening, right? If you can't imagine it
Awesome.
happening, there's no way it's going to come to reality. So
Exactly.
yeah, things are very possible. And then, before I keep talking about that, let me then talk about
Let's
liquidity.
talk about liquidity. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been in the liquidity risk space for a little bit, and
Okay.
liquidity risk and say funding risk, quite depends. You could sort of use it interchangeably, but funding sort of complements liquidity. And the way that I would look at liquidity risk is basically saying what could go wrong from a liquidity perspective for a firm, especially a financial institution.
Okay.
One of the major things that the financial institution, especially the relatively bigger ones, would do is to sort of promote liquidity within the market, right? It's one of the things that they sort of provide to the market. And
Okay.
as you know, with any financial institution, especially a bank, the whole idea is, you take deposits, right? Especially
Mm-hmm.
commercial banks, right? You take
Right.
deposits, maybe we have like 10 people who have maybe 100 CDs, 100 naira, $100, whatever, you choose to deposit, you know,
Right.
you deposit this at the bank. The
Okay.
function of the bank is to then basically create magic out of it, which is
Okay.
money you've provided to me, I can then lend to people,
Okay.
right? There are different people who have different business ideas, different people who, want to do interesting things, different
Right.
people. Some people want to take a mortgage, some people want to buy cars, but
Yes.
you take loans for different reasons. So let's
Yes.
assume that we have the 10 people who have deposited $100 each, right? With
That
the
makes it 1,000.
makes it 1,000, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
for the business, the bank to be profitable, it then has to lend the cash that it has to some other customers, right?
Right.
And like we said, we have a pool of about $1,000,
Yes.
right? Question is, should I lend out all of the $1,000
Mm-hmm.
to people who need the money?
Okay.
Remember that my business is to lend money, right? And
Yes.
basically, what I do as a bank is, let's say you bring your deposit to me, I pay you 1%. I'm just making this up, and
Yes.
then the person who comes and wants to take a loan, I charge them 3%. So
Yes.
basically,
That's typical of Americans.
yeah.
Africa, we are higher.
Well, I would say it's typical
We're
of banks
crazy
all over
higher.
the world, right?
I like the 1% bit, man. I like that.
Oh yeah,
There,
yeah.
there,
Well,
there,
in this
there are
part
no,
of the world,
yeah,
we,
there are
we
loan
look at
sharks here.
it, but yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, okay, continue.
yeah. So, so as a financial institution, well, if you choose to charge 20% or 10% or 2%, well, of course, up to you, right? But the whole
Yes.
idea is that they earn the difference, which some people refer to as a spread, right? That difference
Okay.
between what I pay to my depositors and
And
what I charge to those
okay.
that I
To
provide the
the
loan.
spread.
That
Okay.
difference, right, is
The
basically what
spread.
I earn. That's the profit. But
Yes.
note that
Mm-hmm.
for a bank, they have a lot of expenses, right? You have
Yes.
to pay staff, and that's usually one of the key expenses. It's a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they
Because you
have to.
guys are not cheap.
Oh yeah, well,
I mean, you guys are not cheap at all.
these things are not cheap, right? So all of
Yes.
the staff, they have expenses, they have families to take care of. There's all kinds of things. So you can imagine, to pay all of these people, it gets
Yes.
expensive very quickly, right? And
Yes.
then you have other expenses. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that you're basically just renting a small even a kiosk to do this business.
Right.
You have to pay for rent. You have to
You
pay
pay
for
rent.
all of the utilities, all of those things,
Yes.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
money for all of those come from that spread,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because that's the
Yes.
only way you're able to cover your expenses.
It's true.
However, what you need to realize is, I have collected $1,000 of deposits. The more
Mm-hmm.
I lend out, the more I'm able to earn profits, right?
Yes.
But there's a catch. I have to be careful not to lend out all of the 1,000. The
Hmm.
reason is the depositors, especially
The
if these are like
default.
demand depositors, can come and ask for their money at any point in time,
It's true.
right?
Yes.
So as a bank, and you know, you can imagine this, that you have some money in a bank and then you go to the bank and you say, hey, you slot in your ATM card and you want to withdraw your money and they say, sorry, we don't have any funds.
Oh
What
man, I closed my account.
Yeah.
I'll
so
close my account quick and move
so
to the next
that's
bank.
exactly. And but the interesting thing is, not only will you close your account, you probably will call your friends that
Yes.
have accounts with the same bank and say, hey, I experienced this issue with the bank. You have better go and check if the money is okay, right? And then your friends get there and they're like, oh, I'm experiencing the same issue. Maybe there's a third friend that says, oh, luckily I
Yeah.
was able to get my own cash. Then the
Yeah.
news spreads and everyone is like, oh, let's draw our cash before ours. Sorry, becomes like Isaac, who couldn't get his own
Yeah.
funds. And
Yeah.
basically, there's a run on the bank.
The bank will collapse.
And so all of a sudden, remember that I had $1,000 of deposits. I had lent out, let's say for the sake of this example, I had lent out 900. I kept only 100 to meet
Mm-hmm.
the demand of the depositors if they come, if they put in their ATM cards. But the demand for today actually is $150. So it is more than I have reserved, right? Unfortunately, because of the bank run, which you've just described, right, where all of the friends and everybody's now trying to pull their cash, all of a sudden, the cash that you need is no longer 150. The cash you need can move as much as $800 because now all of the 10 depositors might want to pull their cash.
Oh wow.
And remember, you have lent the money to others. So you are in a fix of trying to then find cash to pay those, right, who are asking
Yes.
for that money right now. And in fact, that is the easiest way for a bank to go bankrupt and the end of the game. That's the end of a bank.
Wow. Wow. So that basically means that you are in a very critical function of the bank.
I would
You're
say that.
very
So yes, liquidity
yes.
risk is very huge, serious, very seriously looked upon, because you know, some people liken it to, you know, because there are different areas of risk, right? Some will
Okay.
say there's credit risk, there's market risk.
Okay.
Credit risk is just saying, hey, what are the chances that the people that I lent my money to will not pay me back,
We'll pay back.
right?
Okay.
The truth is, very likely you might not have everyone decide not to pay you back. Maybe three out of the
Yeah.
maybe 10 or how many people that you lent money might not pay back. Maybe not everyone. And it may not even
Right.
happen at the same time. And it may not be the
Okay.
case that they are not going to pay everything. They might pay a part of it, right?
Mm.
So credit risk will say, you know, it's at the bank little by little.
Okay.
Market risk is slightly different. Market risk is saying, hey,
Okay.
what if the bank decided, instead of lending all of the cash, it decided, oh, let's also invest in something. Let's invest in, you know, equity, say shares of, you know, some of the businesses, so that we can also use that to make a little bit of money, right? So that
Right.
the cash is not just lying there, not doing anything. Remember, we have expenses to
Yes.
pay, right? Market
Yes.
risk is then saying, what happens if, unfortunately, those investments go bad,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Then you are short. And remember, you still have to pay those guys that $1,000 plus the interest, right? So
Okay.
you're not being able to make up whatever you owe them just because your investments went bad, or wherever it is that you put your money in, is more like market risk, right?
Okay. Okay.
You have other areas of risk, you know, operational risk and all of those things. But this, like credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk, are some of like the major pillars of risk, if you will. And so again, you would see that market risk, credit risk will eat at you slowly. Your investment is not just going to go bad the same day, you know, and all of your investments. It's just like saying, you know, unless, you know, somebody is out for you or God himself is out for you, right? Everything will probably not go bad at once
But at the same time, yeah,
and at the
that would
same
be
time,
terrible.
right? So, however, where liquidity risk is different is that it can very quickly spiral out of control. Like you see, and like we've noted, just because one person had an issue drawing their funds, and very quickly how things can spread. And you can imagine in social media now, I don't have to see you
Oh
in Twitter,
yes.
right? I can literally tweet or put something on social media and say, hey, I got to this bank and see what happened. And before you know what's
Yeah.
happening, you have, queues at the banks, people want to draw their cash, and that can have serious implications. So because of that,
Wow.
liquidity risk is relatively very sensitive.
I could imagine. I could imagine. And I talking about that, I could even see the point where banks are investing in technology to kind of listen in on social media conversations.
Well,
So
I,
so.
I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say they're listening in, but of course they will pay attention, right?
Yes.
What's happening. So if I am reading an article and I hear that, maybe another bank is having issues, I will try to be mindful. I want
Yes.
to, if I'm the bank who has taken $1,000 of deposits, then I start to tell myself, oh, if we had given out 800 and we kept only 200, can we put another, $50 or another $100 just in case the same thing that's happened to bank A happens to
Happen.
us?
Okay.
So
Okay.
constantly walking that thin line between how much should I lend out, how much should I invest versus how much should I hold back as cash
Wow.
so that I can pay my depositors. It's that's basically you're managing liquidity risk.
Okay. That is awesome. That is awesome. That is super. So my next question is going to be um, so from what you're doing, what kind of skill set is needed to be able to do the kind of thing that you
Yep, I would say, of course, the basic finance skills are very,
do?
very important,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
Because we haven't, we've basically only talked about a very simple example, right?
Yes.
In just over the last few minutes, and you see we've talked about what we've talked about: deposits, we've talked about loans, we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
interest, we've talked about spreads, we've talked about
Yes.
credit risk, we've talked about market risk. Like we're already talking about some of these terms who
Right.
to the layperson may not make as much
Be
sense,
familiar with.
right?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
want to make sure that you have the basic finance knowledge. You
Okay.
want to have a background in finance, that can be very, very helpful. Um, of course, again, I'm on the risk side, right? I usually like
Yes.
to see risk as, modeling up finance and a little bit of math, right?
Okay.
And the reason is you are trying to ask yourself, what is the chance that this can happen? Oh, okay, I understand the finance bit of it, but then you're then trying to ask yourself, what is the chance that someone is going to draw more? What is the chance that this is going to
Okay.
happen? Then you start talking about probabilities. Probabilities,
Yes.
basically math related. So it's
Yes.
risk is more of your finance background or whatever or that depending on the type of risk that you're focusing on. But I would say finance
Okay.
and maths will be super helpful in
Right.
this kind of
Right.
question. Yeah.
Right. So you're saying it's a combination of basic business knowledge, some kind of math, and what do you call it, statistical modeling and statistical and probability modeling,
I,
right?
I would say yes. It can
Okay.
get very complicated. It can get very simple, and
we like the simple stuff.
and it sort of depends, right? And there are different people. That does not mean that someone who is not a statistics guru cannot work in that field. It does not mean
Okay.
that someone who's a programmer cannot work in that field. You have all
Okay.
kinds of people who come together to try to make it work,
Okay.
right? So you can imagine that someone is trying to understand the relationship between the depositors and interest rates, right? Maybe that person needs to
Hmm.
have a good finance background. Maybe
Right.
somebody's trying to understand, oh, the guys that I gave my loan to, I think I gave cash to as loan. Are they going to pay me back? That person maybe
Right.
just has to have a good knowledge of how the depending on the kind of loan, if it's a car loan, of how things are. If it's a mortgage, what are the markets looking like? Somebody has to have knowledge of what's happening there, right? Then there's then somebody who's putting everything together and saying, oh, okay, the deposit person has told me this, the loan person has told me this. Now with all of this, then let's bring in the probability that all of these things happen. So it's a wide spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
I'm trying to not say, hey, you must have this specific kind of skill.
All these.
Yes, so
Exactly.
it's a mix, right? In general, people tend to think, oh, you must learn this and you must be able to, bring heavens down for you to be able
Yes.
to work in these areas. Maybe not necessarily.
Okay.
Of course, you
That's
need to have,
comforting to hear.
yeah, of course, you need to have the basic understanding of this. And I would say two things: ability to learn
Okay.
quickly and
Uh-huh.
curiosity.
That is
Very,
amazing.
very key.
That's amazing. We're going to come there very quickly, but
Yep.
let's just do a little bit segue. So one of the questions I wanted to ask was going to be looking at a company like Goldman Sachs. For me, it's like wow, it's like how do even Africans get into that kind of organization? It's almost like you're looking at trying to get an elephant through a needle hole, right? That's how most of us have been conditioned to think that it's almost impossible to be working in these kinds of giant enterprises.
Yep.
So we're gonna come to the journey that led you there. But before then, let's take your story, your journey. I know that you originally were born and raised in Nigeria.
Yep.
You can just quickly share a little bit of a story, yeah, the one that you can remember. I know you've been in America for a long time, so you've been Americanized. So 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 share a little bit about how you grew up, or what your journey was like from Nigeria up to where you are. The reason why that is important is that there will be other people. You're talking about millions of young people all over who may have been in a similar situation that you were, but they haven't even ever even heard of Goldman Sachs, let alone to think that it's possible to work there. That is it. I mean, I believe when they see where you have come from, you're not born in America, or you are not, you didn't start in Goldman Sachs,
Yeah.
basically. I think that is going to strike a chord. So a little bit of background story that you want to share, right?
Yeah, it definitely. So in terms of background, I would say, of course, I was born and bred in Nigeria. I spent,
Niger.
yes, I spent most of my time in Lagos,
Okay.
and one of the suburbs in Lagos. And of course, like you said, I was, just like almost the average kid. Um,
Yes.
back then. And of course, so many things shape you
Yes.
to become, who you are, or that bring you to whatever situation or position that you find yourself today.
Mm.
I would say sometimes, and maybe this is for parents in general. I don't know if I'll have the
Yes.
opportunity to say this, but
Say.
the schools are very important,
Okay.
right? I would say right from the elementary school, the primary school, as
Mhm.
we call it, right?
Yes.
Because to be honest, sometimes when I think back and I'm like, okay, what's the one thing that has been, constant, one factor in terms of, my schooling all through that I feel has been very, very helpful. I still think,
Mm.
if I think back, my primary school is it.
Wow. Wow.
Be-
Why is that?
because because from the foundation, I think even the Bible says, it says, if the
Mm.
foundation be destroyed, it says, what
What can
can
the
the righteous
righteous do?
do? Right?
Yeah.
So, right from the elementary school, primary school, right, you are taught to be inquisitive. You're taught to
Mm.
want to find out the connections. We did quantitative reasoning, we did verbal reasoning. You're trying to look at, different shapes. You're trying to look at different numbers. You're trying to look at how the dots connect. You're basically, it's sort of a test of intelligence, right? How
Mm.
how much you want to solve this problem. right? And
Yes.
I feel like how well, the teachers taught us to think
Mm.
about trying to solve these problems was very helpful. And then, that
Interesting.
inquisitive spirit, the fact that they,
Okay.
they made me competitive. I
Okay.
was in a class then, and, some of these things now might be considered a little bit, um, extra. But then
Mm-hmm.
my primary six teacher had a system where
Okay.
we were constantly competing.
Mm.
And so in class, you had to sit the closest to him to almost the farthest to him. So you had to
Oh.
sit, I wouldn't say the farthest, but basically from left to right of the class,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And so those on the left, depending on how you performed on the test the
Mm-hmm.
previous week, it will determine how you are going to sit the next week, right? So
That's
basically, if anyone came into the class on Monday and saw you sitting there, they knew, oh my God, he must have done very
that
well,
is it.
right? And then you constantly saw that we were competing within ourselves to see who was going to
Okay.
sit on that side. So if you saw
Okay.
your close friend who is sitting 2 rows to your left, you probably knew, oh, he did very well. Next week,
Well,
I'm going to make sure that I'm the one who does better, and I'm going to be the one that is sitting on that side. I'm going to
on
show
the
them.
other side.
So that
So
competitive, yeah,
wow.
so
Wow.
those kind of competitive spirits, I think really
Mm.
helped. It went with me all
Mm.
through to secondary school, and
Yes.
of course university.
University.
Of course, you get to learn more as you progress,
Mm.
but I feel like that spirit, that competitiveness is built when you're young, and
Okay.
sometimes it stays with you, and it
Yes.
can be a determining factor, on several occasions. So
Mm.
enough of the primary school, but I just thought, to
Wow.
to highlight that. So yeah, so primary school was great for me. I'm grateful to parents, teachers, all of those who sort of contributed. I went to a public school for secondary school. Uh,
Mm.
that was also good.
Yes.
And it was not the best by any means, but I had a decent education there. I can
Great.
say that I had a decent education. Then I went on to university again, which of
Yes.
course was a public school, and again,
Wow.
again, education was great. You know, um, Looking back and then having experienced
Mm.
the American way of
Okay.
the higher institution and learning,
Yes.
there's a lot that can be done differently, and that's a separate
A
conversation.
separate. Yes.
Yeah, that's a separate conversation, but yeah, so I definitely had college in a public school,
Okay.
university, like we like to call it. And
Yes.
I studied computer science and economics.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
you know
That's a good combination.
it is a good combination, but I think I studied it because I felt it sounded fancy. Well, so it was good. It sounded fancy. I
Yeah.
liked
You
it.
liked it.
Yeah. However, I think that I tended more towards the economics side than the
Okay.
computing side. At least
Okay.
that's one of the things that I learned, going through the process. And
Awesome.
while this was happening, and this is where sometimes also the college that you go to gets interesting. Of course, I met a
Right.
couple of people, right?
Mm.
Some of them, interesting, wonderful people, and some of them have founded some of the big businesses that you see around today. You know,
Wow.
yeah, like some of the tech
Tech companies.
tech companies that are in Nigeria today, some of them, are founders for this. Some of them
That's
are,
amazing.
yeah. So,
Be-
in fact,
Because
yeah,
yeah, Nigeria has some unicorns now. Unicorns are companies that are valued $1 billion and that.
oh, yes. So
Paystack, Flutterwave, and all those kind of
exactly.
companies.
Jobberman, some
Yes.
of the guys who started Jobberman were literally my classmates. We sat next to each other, right? So,
Wow.
So you then meet lots of people who have different interests, right? So again, while these guys, some reason, had that vision, knew what they wanted to do, we also had people in the same class who had no idea what was going on in the world, right?
It's normal.
But yeah, so you have the broad spectrum of people, right?
Yeah.
And so, and while I believe I sort of was in between, but luckily for me, with my father being more on the finance side, of course, then I had that push, which was okay, you're doing computer science and economics. Economics look, like in fact, you have much better grades on the economic side than the computing side of things. And he's like, okay, why don't you consider taking some of the finance exams?
Okay.
And he suggested it, and of course, I brushed it aside for a couple of years. I think after some years, then I decided, okay, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
You'll probably fail this exam, and you already know I didn't want to take it anyway. So let's try it. And that's how I took the first finance exam. It's an accounting exam. So it's the Chartered Accountant's exam. We refer to it as ICANN, in Nigeria.
Okay. Institute of Chartered Accountants, Nigeria. Right.
Yeah, Institute of Chartered Accountants in Nigeria. And, I also remember that quite luckily, I also met a very good friend. He's my best friend today. And he, funny enough, his father had been pushing him about the same thing, although we were both studying computer science. Right?
Oh, wow.
And so, again, another interesting point is, having people with like minds, people who are willing to push you, people who you share passion, right? So with him, it brought an interesting twist to it. So it was like, let's just see, let's just try it out. And so we took a walk to the building where, we had these tuition centers, just both of us. We strolled there, and then we spoke to the guys there, and they said, hey, it's interesting. You guys can come join. It's not very expensive. You can join. You can start next week. And we're like, oh, interesting. And and that's how it started. And while I was taking the classes, I was thinking, okay, I don't know if I want to take the exam yet, but let's just even see where it takes me. And then in the first registration of the exam, I remember having to leave Lagos to go spend time with my friend to prepare, because I said, okay, I was going to write it. I think because my school was not in Lagos, it was outside of Lagos. So I think I registered closer there. And so I remember leaving home and, I told my mom at the time that, let me go and just fail this exam. Right? I'm not even going to pass this exam, right? I just want to go and fail it and come back home, right?
Right.
And to be honest with you, that was it. I ended up passing the exam, right? So I passed the first one, which, again, talks about the foundational business issues, economy, I think it's contract law and a couple of other things. So I passed that.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of hoops that you have to go through. But then, I started writing the different stages of the exams, passing. Of course, I failed once or twice. But lo and behold, as at the time that I was graduating university, I was also sort of qualifying. I passed all of the qualifying exams.
Oh, so you were doing them side by side.
So exactly.
That's not an easy thing.
Yeah, it wasn't the easiest of things, but like I said, having the right crowd, a friend who we could fail and still be enthusiastic about it. We could fail together and we'd laugh about it. How can you be so stupid? You fail this, this simple course. And, we would joke about it, right? It made it a lot easier, right? And then, of course, the encouragement from home, my parents.
From home.
Yeah. So those are some of the things that help. I do acknowledge the fact that not everybody has that kind of background, right?
Exactly. Because one thing that I didn't tell you is that I did engineering in my first degree in Ghana. They call it construction technology or something like that. We call it building technology those times. And after that, well, I went to UK and I did something similar. I did the ACCA, and it was very difficult. So it's like I'm curiously listening. It's like, wow, yeah. So
Yes.
you've got a brother in that line.
Okay, good. Yes, I'm sure you know those exams are not the easiest, but with
Yes,
a bit of
appreciating.
perseverance, right? Not just
Yes,
easy, a bit of perseverance,
exactly.
maybe you're able to scale the different hoops. And again, the kind of friends you meet, I've always
Yes.
felt, and from a very young age, I've had this analogy that in my head that the people you work with
Mm-hmm.
determine to a large extent how far you go.
Yes, so
I've
true.
always likened it to, if you're a group of friends, think of it like, if you have 4 or 5 friends, think of it like all 5 of you have a rope tied around you and you're dragging yourselves in different direction, right? So if among you is someone who's a progressive, someone who thinks right, who's willing to put in the work, someone who's willing who's a go-getter, he'll probably
Yes.
drag all of you
In that
towards
line.
in that line. However, if you also have someone within the group who does not want to do anything, who always just wants to go have fun, he's also going to drag all of you to your life. So, so no, that group of friends that you have, I think, is very, very critical, right?
It is.
And
It
I said,
absolutely is.
oh yeah,
It is.
like I said, it's how I got to meet some people who are founders of some of the technology companies or like the unicorn sites.
Wow.
Right?
That I'm not surprised about that.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
surprised
this,
about that.
exactly. That's the same way I met a friend who was interested in accounting, and we ended up taking this together. So I feel that's very important. But
So
to
you've
yeah,
been impacted by good company.
I would say very much so. Very much so.
Because you see, I just remember there's even this scripture verse that says that the companion of the wise shall be wise, but the companion of the fool shall be
Ooh.
destroyed.
Exactly.
You get it? Yes, and I heard it somewhere that you are the average of the 5 people that
5 people that you move with or you're closest to. So
this is
that's
very powerful. What you're saying is very, very powerful.
yeah. So that's why I have been very, very careful. And I know myself. I'm probably one of those who can be easily influenced, right?
Yes.
You need to know yourself, right?
Yes.
So I'm very protective of those who I make my friends because that's the way that I can protect myself, right? I don't want to I do not need an inflated sense of self. I know that this is my weakness, so I have to protect myself against it.
Exactly.
Right? So for me, having good company was definitely very, very helpful, right? And so of course, myself and my friend, by the time we were done and ready to get into the workforce, of course we had the degrees in computer science, in economics. We also basically had passed the qualifying exams for accounting. So we had like a brother set to choose from.
Yes.
Right? And of course, when it was then time, I joined Deloitte actually. And although I joined Deloitte with the intent of becoming an IT auditor because I felt okay, I did a bit of computer.
Yeah, that's
science.
a good synergy.
So why not? Like I was looking out for that role, but they said no, we don't have an opening on that team. However, there's an opening on the they called it the IFRS team, which was a new team.
Okay. International Financial Reporting Standard.
Exactly. So we had the National Accounting Standards Board. We were trying to migrate from the local accounting standards into the international one.
Yes.
And that team was just being created. And for me, so this period this is a period where you do a 1-year national youth service training and or service is it's what it's called. So I decided, okay, yeah, if that's what's available, a role in this team. I also have an accounting background, right? You can definitely try it, right? And that was it. That's how I started, and I realized I loved it. and they started to grow within that team. I ended up, helping to train lots of companies within Nigeria, right? I even remember, I think I was in Ghana once to train a set of folks. I train people on the international financial reporting standards, right?
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah, so it's in fact it's I cannot say that open to me just because of that step. Again, right? My dad encouraged me, my friend was helpful, and then a little bit of perseverance and willingness to just fail, right? Basically steered me in that particular direction. And that was, basically how I moved to the world of finance.
Wow, I think your dad was a very visionary person. Or
I will give him the credit.
Yeah, he could see what you couldn't see.
Yes. And, of course, people say, hey, you should leave your children to decide what they want to do. But I think from my personal experience, I think that, hey, the parents know what's going to happen further down the road than yourself.
Yes, he's traveled that distance before.
Exactly. So he can tell you he can foresee, what could potentially happen. Of course, it doesn't mean he's 100% right, but there's a big chance that he might be able to guide you. I think maybe I'm just making a case for parents in general, helping to get the younger ones, right? The younger ones generally feel, oh no, leave me, I'm going to do what I want. It's my generation. You don't know what's happening now. But the truth is, they've been there. They've seen these things, right? And maybe they can help. Maybe not necessarily coerce you into doing this, but maybe they can help guide you.
Yeah, and I think sometimes today parents, because you've lived with them for a long time, good parents are able to observe their kids and begin to put pattern around their lives that, look, this child is very artistic. So naturally, I would want to support this area. Sometimes they see you, you wouldn't know it, but they know that you're very, very analytical in your thinking, you're very good in math, you're very, very detail oriented. It's very, very easy for the dad to push you in that area because he knows the character traits of people who will be good accountants.
Exactly.
Yes. So how did you end up in the United States?
So I had been doing a lot of the trainings. Luckily for me, I think at the time I was one of the best in the things that what I was doing. And I will credit this to someone who said something interesting to me at the point. And this was the training that I got at Deloitte. He's a partner now, and he said something. He says, if you want to be the best in your field, you should study an hour every day.
Wow.
For 5 years. Right? And he said for him, he felt 5 years was too long.
And so he doubled.
Yeah, so he wanted to shorten it basically, right? So he doubled it to 2 hours every day.
Wow.
And he said, truth is, 3 years down the line, he could see the results. Right? And this is a guy who became a partner at a very young age at Deloitte, right? So of course, I had every reason to.
You had the proof.
Exactly.
Believe
him. And lo and behold, I tended to follow his advice. I struggled between 1 hour and 2 hours daily.
Yeah.
Given the work,
nothing is better than nothing.
Yeah, exactly. But I tried, and I believe, as at the time that I left, I was, one of those who I would consider a specialist, in what I was doing. And at the time, I felt like, okay, I'm a specialist here, even, within the firm, Deloitte at the time, I'm a specialist, I want to learn more, right? I want to learn more. I don't want to be the local champion.
Yes.
And so, first of all, I, started looking out for other exams, developmental programs that I could enroll in. Some of them the CFA, some of them that's the Chartered Financial Analyst program.
That's also a tough one.
Yeah, Yeah. Oh yes. Then you have the FRM, which is the financial risk manager. Definitely a couple of them. And then there's I also took, I think during that period I took the diploma in IFRS. That's an ACCA thing as well. So all of these things, I kept doing these things basically to see, okay, I don't want to remain stagnant. I might be good today, but what happens tomorrow? What happens 5 years from now? And I think is a very good point to also talk about someone who influenced me positively. Is Christian Ekegwe, and he was a good friend to my dad, right? And I think maybe one of those times when I was being, just unnecessarily stubborn, and my dad didn't know how else to convince me. He just said, "Okay, you know what? I'm just going to set up time with you and him. You just go and meet him and just talk to him."
That's it.
Yeah, like nothing. Just
thank God for good parents.
Yes, and and then when I spoke to him, he told me about why we want to have a great time now. Why don't I discount the present good time and see if I can have a great time, a much better time in the future?
Yeah.
I remember him telling me, hey, if you, let's say, yeah, you want to have a good time now, you're in the university, you want to have a good time, what are you going to do, with your friends? You guys go to the E3, you get some snacks, you get a couple of drinks, and then, you say, oh God, I had a good time. I went out with my friends or maybe with my girlfriend or whatever. And he's like, okay, but you can save that time now and invest that time such that it compounds, and later in the future, in fact, your idea of fun will change. Your idea of fun, and I remember him telling me then that your idea of fun could be, I think it was South Africa that was going to host the World Cup at the time. And he was like, the idea of fun could be that, well, maybe I want to go to South Africa to watch a match.
Exactly.
My friend.
And buy a ticket and go.
And he's like, see, all of a sudden, the idea of the scale of fun has changed just because you decided to delay that gratification at that
gratification.
And he then explained to me about the concept of competing for the future. And he said to me, hey, there are some places now where there is food, just using food for lack of a better word now, where the resources are. That's the hub of all of the activities, right? But there are some places, those places that are the hub may not necessarily be the hubs tomorrow or next year. So why don't you start to think of it like, while some people are already at the forefront, it's like you're trying to take food, right? And someone is in front of the pot and there's a queue, right? The person who has the pot in front of him is most advantageous. Yes. But you must remember that person thought about it in advance, right? And maybe before you, and that's why he has the advantage of being right in front of the pot now. And he said, don't you think of where the pot will likely be tomorrow? And start moving in that direction. Right? So he explained to me, and he basically called it competing for the future. You're not just competing for now. You must start to compete for the future. Right?
Wow.
And, when he spoke about those things, those things kept, reverberating in my mind, right? Yeah. And so, of course, as I continued to work with Deloitte, putting together some of these good things that people have deposited in me, have told me about, I kept telling myself, okay, I'm a specialist in this now, but I want to get better. How do I set myself up to compete for the future? Not just now, right? I'm a local champion now, but how long is that going to continue, right?
Exactly.
And, that's why I again continued to enroll in developmental programs. Of course, some of them are expensive, nothing good.
Nothing good comes cheap.
Exactly. So, of course, I would have to sacrifice, make sure that I paid, because some of these programs are in dollars, right? And you can imagine
thousands of dollars.
Exactly. Right. So, of course, I would have to save to make sure I could enroll in these programs, but I felt they were beneficial. And then at some point, I decided, okay, now I think I need to actually go into that market. what's the most advanced markets, financial markets in the world? And I thought London, New York,
Yes.
why not be there? Why not learn directly from the best?
Yes.
Right? And of course, I started to think of this over and over and over again. And then I decided, okay, and of course, for my findings, and I think, maybe this would be helpful for a couple of others who have been asking. Some people reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, and they're asking me, oh, how did you do this? And, like, I think for me, when I researched, I felt, okay, one of the ways of getting yourself abroad is to study, right?
Yes.
The master's is easier, much cheaper than a bachelor's degree. So I decided, okay, at least this is going to be 2 years as opposed to if I had to spend 4 years, right?
Yes.
And of course, it doesn't come cheap. And so that is where things like scholarships come in. And a lot of these colleges offer scholarships. But the truth is, you do not know. Again, if you don't even envision it, you cannot leave it.
You can't, exactly.
Right? So you have to be able to envision it, and sometimes you must be willing to take risks, right? Yeah, I remember, I applied for, of course, a couple of programs. I didn't even know how I was going to come up with the fees for the first semester.
But you applied anyway.
I applied anyway. I just told myself, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And the one thing I kept doing was I told myself, I'm going to save enough to at least pay for the first semester. After that, I don't then know what is going to happen.
What will happen?
And I remember telling myself, one, try and save for just the first semester. There was no way my pay would have been able to take care of the second semester, even if I was saving everything as I was earning. Right? So I told myself, okay, save for the first semester, right? Get yourself there. By the time your father realizes, hey, my son is there, he's stranded, he will find a way. I don't
find a way.
They have to go and do something, right? Yes. But the first thing is show them that you are willing.
Exactly.
Save and let them know that, okay, you have this much, right? And so that's what I did. I started applying, and luckily, I was accepted to a couple of programs, and I didn't even know about the scholarships as much.
Okay.
It's interesting that it was on one of the conversations where they decided to have an interview with me.
Okay, the school, right?
Yes, the school.
Okay.
And they felt, okay, you're a potential candidate, you have decent work experience. And I would say, this is also good for those who intend to then go for maybe a master's. Get work experience under your belt. It helps you put things in context. When some of these things are been spoken about. We've done a lot of theoretical learning in our undergraduate days, right? Mm-hmm. So when you then have spent a few years in that field, 2-3 years, right? And then you go for a master's, when the professor, the teacher is talking about certain things, it puts things in context because you're like, oh, okay, this is what
I understand.
This is how it makes sense, right? This is how it is, right? So they decided to interview me for that role, sorry for digressing a little bit, for the opening. And then I decided, okay, they decided to, give me the opening. But somewhere in the interview, the lady who was interviewing me said, and by the way, would you be interested in a scholarship?
Oh, my goodness. That was good news.
Can you imagine that? I'm shocked. Like, are you even joking?
Are you? Music to my ears.
Of course. I am definitely interested, right? And that was it. And I sent her an email just as a formal application for the scholarship. And, lo and behold, in a couple of weeks, she came back and said I'd gotten a scholarship for an interesting amount. It was not a full scholarship, but it was going to take care of close to 50%.
That was good.
So again, it just shows how if you cannot envision it, if you will not even take the first step.
That is the thing. Sometimes it's just show up. Just show up.
Exactly. I agree with you. Sometimes just show up. Right?
Oh,
and so, of course, I was lucky. I would say it's the grace of God, in
We,
that.
we, we make our own luck in this world. With the grace of God, of course.
Yeah,
That we make our own luck
yeah.
by
So,
showing up.
so that happened luckily, and then of course you can imagine if I had fees for just one semester, all of a sudden that has covered 2 semesters now, right? Now I have to start worrying, about the third and the fourth semester, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
at least,
Okay.
this is okay. I'll find my way around, right? So again, that was basically how it happened, and a lot of
It happened.
institutions out there are willing to take students. They want to take students. In fact, they have funds that are allocated. They have budgets for scholarship for people who are willing to take them. But if you do not take the first step, if you do not show up, like you say, then unfortunately that door will remain closed. At least to
wow. You. And this is a very good school you went to, right? Is it University of Connecticut or?
It is the University of Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
And
very good school.
It was very good to me. I would say that
wow.
again.
So wow. So you ended up doing an MBA, right?
I did a master's degree. So it was a master's degree in financial risk management. Okay. Again, because I was more finance oriented, I thought that the MBA was more generalistic. And again, I wanted to be a specialist, right? So I decided,
yes,
the master's in financial risk management will be really helpful for me. And that's how I got it. Of course, I applied to like a couple of other programs, but some were very expensive. Some are just very competitive. And so this one, and you can imagine, I initially thought it was relatively cheaper. And then, of course, then you give me the scholarship. Like it.
Makes it better.
So,
sweet deal.
So that's how I found myself in the US. So it's a very long answer to your question, but
this is a good story. This is a good story. So now the ultimate question is then from after graduating from the program in Connecticut, the masters in financial risk management, what journey, from there to Goldman Sachs, can you fill in the blanks? How did you move from there to now Goldman Sachs? Because I'm very interested in that Goldman Sachs story, because for me, most people think that journey is impossible. I mean, it's like, where, how? It's tough. So let's go through that transition and see how the story gets.
Yeah, I would say that, Goldman Sachs is doing a very good job trying to reach out to colleges now. I'm just talking about now, just before I answer your question. They're doing a very decent job of, trying to reach out to colleges. I think in the past, people have thought that, to work in Goldman Sachs, you have to be a Harvard graduate, or, you graduate from Wharton or any of the top schools. But Goldman Sachs, I believe, is doing a very good job of, trying to reach out to schools, to other schools, right? To see how they can even diversify their talent base. Because in fact, from their perspective,
that is good.
They would rather have, if you have a room of 5 people, like why have 5 Harvards in there? If you have people with different perspectives, right? Yeah. So I think Goldman Sachs is doing an intentional job, and I think that's great. I think a couple of financial institutions are also doing this. But in terms of my own experience, I would say that luckily for me, it was networking. And
talk to me about that.
Yeah, and one thing I should say is a lot of these programs, the graduate programs, invest a lot in networking for their students. Maybe it's something that I feel the African institutions can take a cue from, but they actively have a career services team that basically would review your resumes for you, help you correct things, who would invite you to networking events where you have institutions that are present, and you have people from some of these institutions who are willing to speak to you. So you have those opportunities to do all of these things. So those things broaden your mind. Those things help you see how you could be relevant, in the industry. And, basically, on one of those networking events, I met someone, right, who was willing to just come talk at the University of Connecticut. And, he spoke. He eventually became like an adjunct professor, right, with the school. And while I met him, of course, tried to keep, the networking open. And of course, you don't want to just go to these people and say, hey, I need a job, give me a job. No, it doesn't work that.
No.
Right?
No, you have to build a relationship.
You have to build a relationship. And that's very, very important. And I think at some point where me and you were talking, we talked about how in our part of the world, people say, hey, if you do not know someone, you cannot get this role. If you don't know this, you can't get this role. And, the way that I look at that is, while you cannot fix the whole country or the whole continent, right? At least you can fix your own part, right?
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, find a way to be part of the solution, but at least fix your own part first, right? And one of the ways is, instead of looking at the whole, oh, I need to have a connection, I need to know somebody, instead of looking at it as a barrier, why don't you look at it as a means, as a door that just needs to be open? So it's not a complete stop. It's basically something that you have to navigate, right? And say, okay, I don't know anyone, but how do I meet the right people? And then you have things like even LinkedIn now, right, that are very helpful.
Yes.
You can meet people. And, I still see people who reach out to me and they just say, hey, I want to work at Goldman Sachs. What should I do? I'm like, okay, I don't even know you.
I don't know you.
Right? and at the same time, you have people who start with, hello, like, I see your profile, it's interesting, I just want to connect.
Yes.
So you have to start a bit subtle, right? And build that connection. Because at the end of the day, even if I decided, oh, there's an opening and I think this person might be good for it, what's happening is I'm putting my reputation on the line by saying,
on the line, yes,
this person is good, right?
Yes.
And
yes,
there's only so much of that social capital that I have
available. Yes.
Yes. So I don't want to use it up and have the people not show up, or have the people not meet whatever standards that they should have met, right?
Yes.
So at the end of the day, if I had referred just anyone and then the person shows up for the interview and the person can't even answer the basic questions, then or the person joins the firm and the person is
destroy you.
That's not good. Because next time when I have to say, exactly, if I say, oh, I have this other person, they're probably going to look at me like, okay, the last person you got.
We've seen this before.
Yeah, exactly.
We've had this script play out before. So.
Right? So while you want to network, you also have to be careful. You don't just go and say, give me a job. You have to build a relationship. The person has to know you. It's a gradual thing. But networking is very important, right? If you had a problem with your car today, right? And you had a friend who maybe just visited Ghana and says, oh, I have a problem as well with my car. Well, you had someone who has been fixing your car for you and you needed to call someone.
Yes.
Who would you recommend? Of course, it is someone.
I'll call the guy who's,
Exactly. Someone who's.
I'll call my guy.
Exactly. And that's how it is. When people say, oh, you need to know somebody, of course you need to know somebody, right? The thing is, how do you start to cultivate that relationship with the right set of people? Right. So I would think of it as looking at it as, basically a path that needs to be navigated right, as opposed to just a barrier. And I think there are ways on that. There are lots of trainings, teachings out there on how to effectively network. But to go to my the specific question in terms of I go to Goldman. Goldman. Again, it was during a networking session I met the individual who helped, and eventually, like I said, he became an adjunct professor. So I maintained that communication, and then of course he realized this guy's really good in the classes that he was taking. He saw that okay, I was outstanding, and then he felt okay. If you think at some point you need to speak to someone, I'm happy to help, right? And that's basically what happened. And this is I'm going to take this opportunity to also speak to some of us from the with African background or from the African background who think, how can I compete? Because I'll be honest with you, I had peers as well going into you think, oh my God, there's the Chinese who the stereotype is they're so very good at math and programming.
Mathematics.
Exactly. You have the Indians, you have all kinds of people who
the Vietnamese. Yeah.
Exactly. And these guys, the general view is these guys are very smart, and you are wondering, I graduated from a public school here. How on earth am I
in Nigeria?
Right? So the truth is,
beliefs.
Exactly. You can manufacture as many limiting beliefs or as you want. But again, to the point that you noted earlier, just show up. You can have so many things in your mind constantly telling you why you shouldn't, but just try and show up, right? So you can imagine that in that same class that had all kinds of people from all over the world, right? Of course, the Chinese, the Indians, all kinds of people all over the world. The professor then singles me out and say, "You are outstanding," right? And then, so again, I'm just using that to sort of encourage others who might see it as who have those as fears, saying, "Go and try. Trust your knowledge, trust your background."
Exactly.
Right? They have their own backgrounds that might be very strong in math or very strong in programming, very strong in whatever, but you also have your background, right? That somehow it is you, it's originally you, and might be the edge that you need.
Exactly. Your poverty background might be what that robe even may need, that perspective.
Could come out to be very helpful for you, right? So for me, I was lucky. Things went really well. In fact, I became a teaching assistant, in the program as well. And I think it was in the midst of all of this that the professor felt, hey, okay, I'm happy to talk to you. We can talk about what your interests are later on. And to be honest, I had other people reach out to me. In fact, there was an old man then. In fact, this is a very humbling experience. Who reached out? So someone referred me to. Basically, this is the person who was in charge of career services at the point. Basically, told me that he had someone come to him and say he wanted someone with a strong finance background, and who is a bit of an all-rounder, who was good with managing different things. And he said my name was the first thing that came to his mind. This is a white guy who basically said this.
That's awesome.
And I took a trip. I had to go visit. We met at a neutral place. This man was an old man who had started a business from scratch, of course a millionaire by all means, and he just wanted someone who had a good, strong finance background to help run some parts of his business, right? At the time, well, of course, I already started talking to Goldman Sachs, right?
Goldman, yes.
While that was a very interesting proposition for me, I had to think back to the fact that, okay, you came here for a reason. While this is interesting, you cannot stray, from what the goal was. But again, that's how networking helps. I never saw that opportunity, but someone basically just referred me. And, those kind of referrals came over and over, right? So again, I think this is where the Bible too says, it says, if you're diligent, right? It says, have you seen a man who is diligent in his work, right? It says, you will
go before kings.
Exactly, right? So again, have faith, show up, be diligent in what you do, and I would say be hungry for success, right? Just be hungry for it, and be willing to make things happen. I'm one of those who are suckers for those motivational quotes, right? And I remember having a quote that will be in front of my desk that says, "Just make something happen." Just just make something happen. Right?
Exactly.
So don't just be a spectator. Don't just comment. Don't just say, "Oh, I would let this person do it and then I will comment." No, sometimes you go ahead and make something happen. Right?
Exactly.
So again, those are just pep talks that pop to my mind. To answer your question.
Powerful. I mean, I'm just trying to unpack all this in my mind. I wish when I was growing up, I heard somebody say what you have just said in the past week. I think we've probably done a little over an hour. I wish I had somebody like this in my life. I think my life would have taken a whole different trajectory.
Yeah, but thank God we're doing this now. And hopefully,
this is so good, man.
It will be helpful.
This is so good. This is so powerful. Like, you said profound things that I just want to recap. Profound things like, be careful about the company that you keep. It's crucial. Be careful. The thing you said about your primary school shaping who you are now was very, very powerful point, in the sense that we should not discount our upbringing, because there are certain things, certain traits that happen in our background that could potentially be the key thing that unleashes our destiny. Very powerful. The other one is this thing about continuous learning that you said is off the charts. That the counsel that you had from your family friend about studying or reading 1 hour a day, and if you want to shorten the cycle, double the hours. You see all these nuggets, right? And the fact that you stayed on course, and as you did, doors opened for you, and all you did was continually showing up. You just showing up, and as you showing up, good things begin to happen for those who show up. It's not in the Bible, but I think it's good. Good things happen for those who show up, right?
Oh yes, I absolutely agree.
Exactly.
And at least walk prepared.
Yes. You're so prepared, So you realize that things were piling on top of each other, and the fact that the final piece that's even counts or is there networking and bringing value to the relationship before you take. I did an episode a couple of weeks ago about for people who, whatever you want to get from people, what you need to do to get is, first of all, you give. That's how relationships are. You give the value, and that's what you did with your professor.
Oh yes.
And the door opened for you. Absolutely. Man, you are a blessing. you are an absolute blessing, and we couldn't have had anybody talk about this than you are. We are so grateful. We are so grateful. I normally don't do this, but I just feel that any last thoughts that you have, because I just feel that there will be more in this. Just any last thoughts, and then we call it a day. If there are no because I know you're busy. You're a busy man. So
I well, there's so many things running through my mind, but
so many. Yeah,
I would say sometimes have faith.
That's right.
Sometimes have faith. There's a quote that says, "What if I fall?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
But then
Mm-hmm.
it says, "My dear, what if you fly?" Right?
Huh.
So it's easy to again make up so many reasons why you shouldn't try, why you should not dream, why this is going to be a stumbling block. But again, like we have said, sure prepared. We just might fly.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Exactly. And my brother, you are even about to fly higher. I have no doubt about it. And Africa should watch out for this money. Thank you so much for your time and the insights you shared. They have been an absolute amazing blessing. If there's any other adjective, I will just add it to it. It's been phenomenal.
Thank you.
And we are forever grateful for this. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
We'll hook up again.
Right. Thanks very much, Isaac. And we've been able to help. Thanks. Bye.